I'm Miriam David, and I'm chair of the education group, and I'm really delighted that Anat Matar, who is a friend of our Nira Yuval-Davis, who is on our education group, is going to speak to us tonight about her work in Israel with academics in Israel. And I'm going to hand over to Nira now to introduce Anat more formally, and then Anat will speak. Nira will ask Anat some questions, and then we'll throw it open to everybody here to ask more questions. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mickey. So yes, I'm a member of the education group of the Jewish Voice for Liberation. I'm delighted at the change of the name of the organization recently, and I'm also a member of the Academy of Equality that Anat Matar is a founding and inspiring member. And that is one of these incredible group of anti-Zionist activists, feminists, socialists, who has been tirelessly active against the occupation for years and years. As I reminded Anat, I first met her 25 years ago at the beginning of the second Intifada, when she gave me a ride in the caravan of Tayush, which was an organization to support the Palestinian, and there was a caravan to bring some food to the West Bank. This is a story in itself, which might be interesting to tell. But obviously, what has been happening in the last 2 years, since the beginning of the 7th of October, have brought, I think, the growing but still very small group of activists into an incredible burden, which they heroically continue to and try and resist. We ask Anat to focus today about the silencing the academy and freedom of speech generally in Israel, but of course the range of activism is much wider. Only last weekend, Anat was part of this group of people who are in the West Bank with some kind of a safety presence, trying still, and that's one of the things I'm going to ask you, Anat, later, to try and draw the maybe difference between the way that the settlers and the army treats Jews and Palestinians in the West Bank, to try and defend the Palestinians in the West Bank with their bodies against what the settlers are doing. Anat is a moral philosopher, has been teaching at the University of Tel Aviv, and as I said, the practice and the rhetoric and the narrative and the theorization have all been very much integrated in her inspiring work. So without further ado, Anat, I'll give you the opportunity now to present what you want to present initially, and then maybe ask a few further questions. But I hope very much everybody in the relatively small groups that we have today, which will give more space for active questions. And Anat, in addition to focusing on what is happening in Palestine, Israel, as she mentioned a bit earlier, she's also very much aware of what is happening here and what is happening in the global context. So that's something which I think is very much to welcome. The floor is yours, Anat.
Thanks very much. Thank you, everyone who came, attended, and especially to Nira for the very, very complimentary introduction. What I'm going to do is to give a sort of opening review of the context before October 7th, and then and then what happened in the universities and colleges in October 7th, or right after October 7th, for a year and a half, and then the last half a year, which is different. Many other things happened, and then it's important to know and to realize. I'm basing what I'm going to say on several sources. One of them is my own experience, not only as an academic in Israel, but also as an active member of Academy for Equality. I volunteer in both solidarity teams, which I'm going to mention a little bit later, but the solidarity with students and the solidarity with faculty. So I gather my information from there. There's also the Academy for Equality report from several months ago, and I put a link to the report. I think it's an excellent report. It holds 25 pages of detailed analysis done by our friend Aris Bishara. And it's for you to look at when you wish. There's also material which I haven't brought here, but is combined in what I'm going to say by Adala, which is a human rights organization dedicated for the Palestinian minority in Israel, and they're working, well, as you may assume, according to the name, to safeguard the rights of Palestinians in the academia as well. And just recently, I think a day or two ago, an article by both friends, Maha Sabah Karkabi and Sarab Abu Rabia Quader, both of them professors at the Ben Gurion University, and both are members of Academia for Equality and personal friends. And they published together an article, which again, I put in the link. It's exactly on the topic we are talking about: the politics of silence, Palestinian faculty, and the struggle for voice in Israeli academia in times of war. So what they do in the article is a little bit different, because they give a very thorough background, and not focusing only on or even specifically on what happened after October 7th. So my focus is a little bit different, and of course an academic article is not exactly what I'm doing now. So, but both things I think are easily readable and very interesting and very thorough. So about the context, the general atmosphere in Israel academia before October 7th. This is something that if we don't know it, we can never understand what happened in October. And something that is very important for us to understand, and I think by knowing at least some of your names, which I saw on the screen, you are aware of that, being activists like myself for the academic boycott. Academic institutions in Israel align themselves with the state narrative. So by promulgating Zionism, I mean, Zionism is the presupposition underlying everything in the academic institution, any academic institution apart from Palestinians, which are very rare, especially the Hebrew University, which is called the Hebrew University, not just for fun. This is something they admire, and then we'll reach that point of the affair of Nader Ashelhof Kevorkian, maybe the lowest point we've had in the last couple of years regarding silencing in the academia, and the reaction of the Hebrew University was, well, we are the Hebrew University, we are Zionists. And they simply said that. You cannot say you're an anti-Zionist. And of course, there are many, I mean, not many, but there are anti-Zionists working and studying in Israeli institutions, academic institutions, but they are marginalized by this very fact and have been marginalized ever since. So this is one thing. The other venue or narrative with which the Israeli academia is identifying itself even more, I would say, than with Zionism is the military and the security organizations, because most of the Jewish faculty and students were soldiers, were or still are soldiers or officers in the army. Many of them still participate in reserve service or had participated in reserve service. So this is a common denominator that is very, very hard to break. This is true for all the Israeli society. I'm sure you know that there's nothing to elaborate on at the moment, but it's really important to remember that when we discuss what happens in the university, because this is something that is so deeply ingrained, it's so implicit that we have to shed light on it or just make it explicit in a way. So, and there's also, relating to this, but a different point, the collaboration with the army in research, because there are researches done by most of the big universities. My university, Tel Aviv University, has several dozens, I would say, projects like this, but other universities as well, the Technion, of course, Weizmann Institute, of course, but others as well. And there are special programs dedicated for soldiers. I mean, all sorts of soldiers just released, or soldiers who are now in service and they take some time off and go to study, or something in between. And these soldiers, some of the time, come to the campus with all this is before October 7th, with uniforms, sometimes with arms. And there's also the symbolic level as well. The university behaves as you would expect it to behave in the National Days of Remembrance, in the Independence Day. You see lots of flags, national flags throughout campuses, and the whole atmosphere is suffocating if you don't identify yourself. It's suffocating for me. It's really, really difficult to be there in these days, let alone for Palestinians. So the silencing effect on Palestinian faculty and students is, as I'm using here the terminology used by Maha and Sarab in their article, a hidden curriculum. I mean, so what I said is a sort of basic level, and then there is a second level of what is taught, what is assumed while teaching, what are the syllabi for courses. So there's always an implicit assumption regarding the Palestinian faculty and the students that maybe they are not that loyal. And again, I'll reach that in a moment when I talk about October 7th. So maybe they are not exactly with us. They haven't been to the army. They don't share our values, something like that. So this is implicit. This is often denied explicitly, but it is here. And one of the, I think, another important information that you should, and this is the last thing I'll say before October 7th, that you should know, that there is almost 20% population, or 20% of the population in Israel are Palestinians. Students are about 17%, which is not bad, relatively. Faculty, 3.3%. So this is all we have in terms of Palestinian faculty. Hardly any. Very, very few. So that's where, think of how it feels being a student, a Palestinian student arriving to the campus and not meeting any Palestinian faculty, any Palestinian lecturer, maybe throughout the whole career. So that's the background. After October 7th, as I said, I'm talking about the first month or couple of months, and then another year. So first month, and then until a year and a half, until March, and then after March, I'll speak. Let's wait for March later. Right at the beginning, that means from 9th October. We saw many disciplinary steps taken against mainly Palestinian, but not only, mainly Palestinian students and faculty. also Jewish. I'll reach that in a moment. 77 cases I know of. I believe there are more. These cases ended or started even with suspension, with termination of work, with harassment by others. That's a very dominant phenomenon, harassment by other students or faculty, hostile attitudes towards Palestinian students and faculty. So an unwelcome work environment against students and faculty, especially those who spoke critically about the war on Gaza. So even those who were silent, but those who spoke, they drew fire. So most of the proceedings, I'm talking now about the semi-legal proceedings, the disciplinary hearing, they were concluded, most of them, without any action taken against those students. Focusing on students now. So students were first suspended before any proceedings, before even they knew it in some of the times. So in Haifa, that was made very well known because Haifa faculty came out against that quite noisily. Because many students were suspended before even they knew it and before any proceeding was conducted. And then slowly, there were proceedings, and then eventually almost all of them were not found guilty on anything and came back to studies, but they suffered, of course, what you would expect they would suffer. Well, first of all, they lost courses, although in the first weeks and first month even, the Israeli academia was numb, so there were no studies at all. But even though we didn't have courses, there were exams, they couldn't go to campus. And moreover, at least 10 lecturers, Palestinians and Jews, who signed petitions, who posted on social media, who gave interviews, were either sacked or disciplined in any other way. This was mainly in colleges, not only, as again, the case of Nira Yuval-Davis. I'll talk about it in a minute. There's also right-wing monitoring has been going along for years. I'm sure actually you know that. Maybe some of you even are targeted by those Israeli right-wing monitor groups. I have been monitored for dozens of years, really. But now it was much more stressful and much more directed towards Palestinians, both students and faculty. And for students, more than even the faculty, it was really intimidating. I know because, as I said, as member of the team working with those students, I saw how frightened they were. So they monitored the social media activity, and Maha and Sarah quoted in their study, and I know it personally. People simply left Facebook, left TikTok, left whatever else, Instagram, or stopped liking, stopped posting new posts, just to be on the safe side. So about silencing, this is a very clear case of silencing in the academia. And those right-wing groups are filing complaints. They keep doing this, are filing complaints. They incite the institution to take measures against, especially faculty in this perspective. So, but also against students. There were few violent incidences, really violent, physically violent. The worst one was a mob, an unacademic mob, attempting to storm student dormitories at the Netanya College. It's a small college. It's quite rural. I mean, Netanya is not that rural, but no one really heard about this college, but it exists, and there are students there, and there are many Palestinian students there, and they live in the dormitories. And the mob just surrounded the dormitories and started not only shouting but throwing stones and intimidating and threatening, and they were just taken out by police. Otherwise, I don't know how it would have ended. So police came. They did not really disperse the mob, but they took out the students, and who never got back to the dormitories, by the way. So that's the worst case. I remember it was very close to maybe October itself, end of October, maybe November. There have been violent reactions to peaceful demonstrations for Gaza in several places, mainly in Ben Gurion University. In Ben Gurion University, especially in one of those demonstrations came Almog Cohen, I think he's called. He's a member of Knesset, very, very right-wing member of Knesset, and he shouted at them and threw things at the demonstrators, and the university president didn't say a word against that. They felt deserted, they felt humiliated, the demonstrators. And again, the problem is mainly with the students. They're really afraid. And there are minor harassment individuals in other universities as well, including Tel Aviv University, which I attested. So the universities, in particular, more than the colleges, joined the wartime atmosphere. It was in speeches, and very famously, my university president, Porat, called Hamas Amalek. It was a war on Amalek in 7th November, a month after the massacre in October. But in other speeches as well, they have dealt with active advocacy of army strategy, in international platforms. There are many gestures towards reserve soldiers, how we should embrace them, and what kind of rights they have now in courses. I'm now retired, but I was still teaching in the first year. So I remember it was really unpleasant to get all those directives, how to treat your reserve soldiers nicely. And of course there was, in a way, an understandable strong focus on Israeli hostages, but without any word about what happens in Gaza. It took a lot of time until the university said something very weak against the humanitarian crisis or something like that in Gaza. But so this unproportional attitude, again, I'm thinking as a leftist, as a radical leftist, as an anti-Zionist, but also I'm trying to think with my Palestinian friends, and I think you can understand how unwelcome you feel in this atmosphere. Moreover, there was hostile attitude towards political events. That was something rather new. I mean, in Haifa University and in Ben Gurion University, it's been a tradition not to like leftist events, but in Tel Aviv University, it wasn't the case. And in the Hebrew University, it wasn't the case. There were always negotiations, but on the whole, there were no specific problems. After October 7th, it was really, really hard to do anything, to hold a vigil on the main lawn, to have a lecture event, to have a concert even. Palestinian students of the one of the chapters, the Hadash chapter, the Communist Party chapter at the university, they wanted to hold a concert, and they didn't get a permit, and then they got a permit after a legal advice they got a permit, but in another place, and it was all very, very problematic and difficult to maintain. Vigils, I know, because we held them throughout the time, and the security was brought, and sometimes the police came from outside the university, which is not actually allowed, but they did arrive at the university because the security officers called them, and we were disciplined, some of us, about them. So again, I'm not going to go into detail about that, but it created a very unwelcome atmosphere. But there were different reactions in different institutions. Before I get to Nadira as my main example, the militarization in campus, which has always been there, as I said, just grew much, much wider. You could see much, much more people coming with uniforms and with arms, and some of them belonging to those specific programs, special programs that I mentioned, but others, they're coming to the reserve, they're going to the reserve, and they feel very. I remember that one of those students without uniforms, but it took a very long rifle from underneath his chair in my class. And when the class ended, I asked him not to come with this anymore to my class, and he disappeared. He never arrived to my class. He was drowning or something, but then he never showed up. But I don't know how many faculty would dare doing this. Would they're saying this, or would want, actually, because they accept that presence as they were advised to do. So all this caused the marginalization of Palestinian presence, of their voices, of their wishes, of their attitudes, of their perspectives, mainly. And along that, maybe you remember that in the first month after October 7th, they were always requested to condemn Hamas. I mean, the first thing, are you condemning Hamas? I mean, before you open your mouth, just say that you were against what happened in October 7th, which, you don't ask, or the Jewish faculty and students are not asked that question. So that led to Palestinian self-censorship, in addition to the censorship and silencing. So less explicit conversations, and less activities, as I said, on social media. And also, we know of many students who sought psychological support. So now I arrive to the most prominent case, and that was Professor Nadira Shalhof-Kevorkian. It was extraordinary because of all sorts of factors. She's been a tenured professor in criminology at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And she gave an interview to a Palestinian podcast was in English, where she expressed deep criticism of Israel, and she gave a sort of nuanced reading of what happened in October. I mean, she wanted to put things in context. She spoke about Israeli politics before October 7th, and how they related to what happened in October. I mean, just giving context to that. And immediately, when it was discovered by those right-wing organizations which I mentioned, and they incited the management, and the Hebrew University management urged her to resign. They said, okay, you're tenured, we cannot let you go just like that, but we'll be very happy if you resign. Just saying that. And the faculty in general, apart from few, of course, our organization, Academy for Equality, but also other particular individuals, but faculty in general in the Hebrew University were resented by her. They haven't really heard the interview in total, but they knew already what she said, which was, I mean, what was taken out was distorted, and they supported the management, and that was the case, especially in her department, where she didn't get any support at all. After a few days, she was arrested by the police. And she was interrogated there. And then the university said, it's not good that they arrest her, something really, really mild, but okay, they expressed mild reservation about her arrest. But eventually she resigned. She couldn't stand it any longer. There are other known affairs, which I'll just mention two, with two Jewish faculty. One of them is Uri Choresh. I'm mentioning him because he's now in Scotland. And because I think he was the first one who was fired on 8th October, maybe on the 7th or 8th. He posted on Facebook an old picture of himself with my heart is with Gaza, or in solidarity with Gaza, or something like that. And his email was cut on the spot. He was simply cut off the university services on the spot, and he was fired. just make a long story. So it took some time, but he was fired really, really quickly. We tried to intervene. There was no one to talk to. We tried to send all sorts of mediators, Palestinian, personalities, nothing. And the other one is Regev Natanzon, who is now in Portugal. Both left the country, who in Sapir College, again, got cold shoulder. I would say just the management reacted very unpleasantly to the incitement of the right-wing mob. And he asked for support and he asked for defense, and they didn't give him, so he left. A word about our activities, Academy for Equality activities. So, as I said, there is a student hotline. Now it's not. There's no problem at the moment, but in those days it was very, very active. Students phoned us and spoke with us, or wrote emails, and we took care of that, or contacted lawyers to represent them, etc. And faculty solidarity team. There's also an international solidarity team, which I'll skip now. There are lawyers who work with us, who work both at the university and outside the university. And I think I'll stop with that. Then comes the last spring. I'm sure you remember it very well, that in March, Israel decided to breach the ceasefire, March this year, 2025. First, they announced the ceasefire. Some hostages were released, but in the same time, Israel announced that it doesn't allow any food trucks in, and the humanitarian crisis just became harder and harder. And then they breached the ceasefire, and in the first days, the day of their attack killed hundreds of Palestinians, most of them civilians, women and children. And then came the killing of the paramedics. I'm sure you remember that as well. And that was on the 20th or 21st in March. And then came the data, the news about the starvation. So all that accumulated to the new feeling by many academics. And they started criticizing the government, not aligning anymore with the targets of the war. The war, as they said, since they supported it until then, is now done. I mean, we shouldn't go back to the war. So since March, people became much more aware of what happens. I didn't say a word about that because it's not our topic, but I suppose you know that the Israeli media doesn't convey anything, but almost anything about what happens in Gaza. And so many were happy to stay in ignorance. And then after March, less so. They were more exposed. And in the university, something really, really positive happened. There's a new movement called Black Flag. Many of the founders are members of Academy for Equality, who somehow use the opportunity to widen the scope. It's much wider than Academy for Equality, but it's focused only on Gaza, and maybe a little bit on the West Bank, but not the general leftist worldview as we are, which is fine because it's effective. They've done many things while it was term time, and now there are daily Zoom events during the summertime, and they're planning to resume activities on campuses when the studies resume. And the last thing I want to say about them, they are much more mainstream people, not right-wing, of course, but they are mainstream. They're more, you'll find more professors, more academic celebs there, and hence they get a milder management response towards them. So I think I'll stop here and then let you ask me whatever you wish. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Anat. Two kind of questions very much emerge immediately from what you're saying. So on the one hand, you point out that the first victim of the silencing was actually a Jew rather than a Palestinian. And I know that maybe you want to say a few words. You yourself was a target of silencing at the Tel Aviv
Later,
University. So you can tell me. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, when you ended up with a black flag phenomenon and so on, it might create the impression as if this silencing was only voluntary, that once mainstream liberal academic kind of started to criticize, then all this kind of silencing and sanctions against those who criticize disappear. And I'm sure that there is some mistake in this kind of version. Maybe you would like to...
Okay. So first about Uri. Uri was the first faculty to have those procedures against him, not the first student. I mean, as I said, the students were, called or not called, but sacked or sanctioned at the very first days. So that was at the same time. Like Uri, but Uri, yes, indeed, was the first faculty member who encountered problems. And as I said, I think I was involved because I'm friends with Uri from years, and he used to study where I was. I mean, the same floor, even in the same building. So we knew each other very well, and he approached me as a member of Academic for Equality and a member of the Solidarity team, and as a friend. So I was involved from the first days. I remember very vividly all the efforts, but then it took, I think, surely not more than a month, and he wasn't there anymore. So that was drastic. About myself, that was much later. I mean, yeah, it was in April 24, so exactly half a year. And it wasn't actually, it had nothing to do, it's not true, but almost nothing to do, not directly to do, with the October 7th events and the war. What happened was that my friend Walid Daka died in prison. So now we know. Actually, I knew it then, but now I think everyone knows that he was starved to death, and he was, it was the Ben Gvir authority, which caused directly to his death. But when he died, I just wrote a short eulogy on Facebook, and I made it public because a eulogy should be public. It's not only for my friends. And it took about 10 minutes, and my phone's WhatsApp, whatever kind of medium you think of, was simply flooded with hate. And then the university, well, first of all, the president of the university issued a statement. It was immediately in the papers, and the university issued a statement that they resent, I don't remember the exact words, but they resent forcefully what I said. They denounce every word. They denounce every word of what I said. It was irresponsible and blah, blah, blah. They are not going to fire me, but of course not. I mean, they had no basis. They knew that. I have a union, and it's a strong union. So, I mean, they now boasting that, but we didn't touch her. Of course not. Well, you should have tried. But they didn't even fire Nadira. I mean, she went, and I was, as I said, I mean, it was my last year. It was April, and in June I was out. So anyway, but it was a strong wave of hatred, and I didn't get any support from my university. That was the first. I know you're waiting for something else, but I'll reach it in a moment. But I remember it very vividly, not from my department, not from my faculty. I mean, what bothered them was how I'll manage with the exams. They asked me not to attend my exam. I said, I'll ask my friend Gadi El-Ghazi, who was tall and big, to accompany me to the exam, because their friend said, okay, I can recruit some big guys to, no, simply don't come. And I said, but this is my students. I want to attend the exam. How shall I answer the questions? And then they simply begged me not to come, and I somehow managed to find someone who came instead of me, but I was really furious about it. As you can see, I can't forget that. After some time, that wave somehow subsided, and then after some time there was another wave initiated by no less than the National Student Union, and they decided to have huge posters and with lights in the center of Tel Aviv and in Haifa and in Jerusalem and in the main roads and the Ayalon Road, if you know it. I mean, very like, you know, the M5 or something. So huge posters of what I said about Walid and of what Nadira said about Zionism. I remember that Nadira and I spoke, of course, about that, and she said we both said that, you know, it's very nice to have in, you know, such big letters a slogan against what Nadira said. It's time that Zionism would die, and so you have that in, you know, such huge letters. And I said, yeah, I respect Walid Daka immensely, and that again was, so it was funny, but the university response was shameful.
So in some way, this.
Oh, yeah, you had this other question. It is true that recently there are less cases of disciplinary procedures. Let's see what happens when the studies resume. The university resumes at the end of October, the end of this month, and we'll see whatever happens in Gaza. I don't have many hopes, but I don't know, some hope. We'll see.
Yeah, because when we talk about Israeli apartheid and so the differentiation between treating even Jewish dissenters and Palestinian used to be huge, and you actually still use it by this kind of safety presence, kind of that Jews are treated better. But what you're talking about in terms of freedom of expression and silencing, the minute you are kind of outside, you step out and you become anti-Zionist, then suddenly you don't belong anymore. And the solidarity of the tight community in Israel kind of throw you out and treat you as Palestinians or differently because you are a traitor. So that you, I mean, how you...
Well, here it depends. I think it depends on personal cases. I just mentioned my friend Gadi, for example. So Gadi is a full professor and he's really admired in our faculty because he's excellent. And I don't know, he was a draft refuser and you know, he's totally anti-Zionist. I mean, but I don't think he gets any hostile attitude towards him. So maybe it's more minor faculty, maybe it's women, and certainly Palestinians. Certainly Palestinians. They're always suspect.
Now, you mentioned mostly...
There is a famous case, which you know, because it's partly English, of Ilan Pape. That's an excellent example of the very opposite of what I said about Gadi. It just couldn't breathe in Haifa.
That was much.
Yeah.
October, yeah, that was the Tantura affair. But you focused on, and as we asked you about the academia, but would you say that similar processes of silencing has happened all over? And is it mostly informal, or have there been real legal changes in terms of the so-called reform, democracy, and so on? I mean, do you want to comment?
Yeah.
About the,
yeah, it's a very important question. So it's both formal and informal. Well, I think the most central case is the case of the medical institutions, because as you surely know, maybe in a way equivalent to what happens in Britain, but there are many Palestinian care workers, doctors, nurses, or paramedics. So there are many Palestinians in the medical institutions, hospitals, and especially hospitals I'm talking about. And there were several cases of harassment of doctors. I mean, not only, let's say marginal paramedic. Really, one of them was head of a surgery department in Nahariya, if I remember correctly. And he was attacked for saying something that didn't sound totally pure. So it happened especially in these, and I think it somehow echoed in the university. I mean, that was very, from the beginning, this harassment. And it was both, as I said, both formal and informal, because some of those doctors were let go by the workplaces, hospitals. And there was another one just recently, actually.
Because as far as I know, Israeli professionals in the medical, but also in some others, have come to be dependent on middle-class Palestinian citizens of Israel. So how did it continue to function since October 7th? Have there been kind of separation between the abstract Palestinian?
So many are self-silencing, self-censoring. Many perhaps didn't want to. I mean, not all the Palestinians are the same, like not all the Jews. So maybe they come to work and they separate, as you say. Because there were a lot of cases of harassment, but most of those people just simply weren't touched. How they managed that, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's difficult. But my perspective is also a bit twisted, because those I know are political, I mean, from the medical professions are like me. So, I don't know about, regular, and I don't discuss I don't know, my.
Yeah, like the Doctor for Human Rights. I want to open the floor to everybody to ask, but maybe the last question, especially as you mentioned, the shift that happened in the last month, and I'm not even going to mention the so-called peace initiative of Trump, but in a way we do need to mention this global context and regional context as well. Do you see any hope for what is happening? Is the genocide going to be stopped now, or is there going to be any kind of real shift of political power in Israel? What?
I wish I believed. First of all, I now remember that I didn't ask an important question you asked before about formal changes, and there is the nation law that was passed a few years ago, and that made Israel formally apartheid state. And I think since then, legally things are a bit different and worse. And then there's the first step, and then the second one is this horrible government that even compared to the horrible governments that were before, it's much, much more disastrous. I mean, there is a spectrum, and it's so much that I hope at the end of it. And this is why I'm not very hopeful. I think that Israel has never fulfilled any agreement. They never stuck to any agreement it signed on. I think I'm not a historian, but from my political memory, I think Israel never always breached an agreement. As I just said about March, but Oslo, for example, so a rather famous one. So and now I don't know whether you know that I think I saw in the Guardian that it is reported, again less so in Israel, but Israel keeps. I hear the airplanes above me because I'm in the route. And there are still bombardments. I just corresponded with a friend in the Muasi, and he said this all the time there are still bombardments. It's not even Gaza City.
Mhm.
So I hope.
Could I interrupt to?
Yeah, no, I was just about to give you, Mickey.
Yeah.
Yes,
You're going
because
to-
we have got
Question.
3 people, and Monash in particular has been waiting for about 15 minutes to ask you.
Okay, sorry
maybe
for
longer.
that.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Anat. It was quite chilling to me about it, and I want to come back to the criminology question, but let Monash speak first, and then Glyn, and then Jonathan, please.
What I'm interested to know is about the academic boycott, whether that's something we need to pursue very strongly, and what effect that will have on the universities, colleges, etc. in Israel. I know also in South Africa there's a big fight about a proposed boycott by the University of Cape Town. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Yeah, well, I've been a supporter of the boycott much before October 7th, so there's nothing new to me about that. But the one thing that's positive is that there are many more supporters, even within academia, of the academic boycott, which I feel less alone. I urge you to, if anyone asks you whether if any Israeli academic was for the boycott, just refer them to me, and I'll explain. I've been doing this for years, and I can continue doing this. That I saw in the reaction of the university presidents, they issued a statement, I think 3 months ago, something like that, after March. So we have already 7 months. Somewhere in the middle, maybe June. They issued a statement calling this war, pointing at atrocities that were committed in the war, and were hoping it would stop. And it was so clear that they were doing this because they wanted to be clear, to come out clear when faced with the question of boycott. And it's good that they did so. So for me, it's just a proof that we have to continue with these efforts, and so many more institutions and will even do something other than simply release a statement. We'll see. I'm for it.
Okay, Glyn, would you like to ask your question now, please?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Anat. You at one point mentioned that you had a strong trade union, if I got it right. Could you describe a bit more the situation of the union pertaining to staff? So I'm actually have to admit to some ignorance about the situation of lecturers in Israel. Are there Palestinian lecturers? Are they in the same union as yourself, or are they in separate unions? And given the incredible hostility you were describing and the reactions after October 7th, how did the union perform in the face of that? Were there any victories, or how did it go?
Yeah, very important questions. So there are several unions. As I said, I mean, there are 3.3% Palestinian faculty in all the universities together. So very few, but there are. The union is for everyone, Jews and Palestinians alike, but it's divided for minor faculty and senior faculty. So my union is the one of senior faculty. Minor faculty are by definition much more fragile, and the union works differently, and it's much weaker vis-a-vis the management. But senior faculty is all, I mean, the management also is part of this, belongs to this union, and the union represents it. I can say from my own experience that years ago, I can't remember exactly the year now, but when I spoke in England, in London, I supported the boycott. Actually, it was very similar to what I'm doing now, but it was a public occasion. And I spoke in favor of the boycott, and there was someone, I'm sure you know him, but a sort of intruder I met many times after, and he wrote a false report of what I was saying. And again, the right wing, it was years ago, asked the management to call me for a disciplinary process, and they did, the management. I was called to a disciplinary committee, and I went to the union, and the union paid for an excellent lawyer, and the excellent lawyer wrote an excellent letter, and the whole thing was just silenced, and that the incident was closed. So I felt I was really lucky and privileged to be represented by this union. And needless to say, none of the members of the union, I mean, the representatives support the boycott. That's totally obvious. But they supported me. And that was, I really feel I was lucky. And I think they would do the same now, even though it's much more difficult at the moment, you know, after October. But I'm quite sure they are committed to the socialist, whatever you can call them, values, to the union values, and they work accordingly. So it's, yeah, they're strong. And this is why, by the way, the Hebrew University couldn't fire Nadira. They knew already. They knew from the start that the union wouldn't let them.
Well, could you, in the chat, could you just put write that the lecturer's name, because I couldn't get it.
Of Nadira?
Yeah, the ones that you pointed to.
Yeah.
Case
Okay.
of professor and so on. Thanks.
Yes, I agree. It would be helpful if you could write it, because it's hard for us to.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it appears in both the article and the report by Academy for Equality, because that was, you know, a big case.
Okay, thank you. Is that all, Lynn?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, would you like to ask your question?
Well, yes, maybe two questions, if I may. One is, you mentioned that heads of Israeli universities a few months ago distanced themselves slightly from the government when the story about starvation began to emerge. However, if I remember rightly, there are 10 university heads and only 5 of them signed.
I'm not sure whether 5, but not all of them signed, yeah.
as it was reported in the press here, it was 5. So I don't know, but I want to know if there's a split, but also it's extraordinary that 60,000 people can be killed, and it's only when something as emotive as starvation comes in that they think they need to distance themselves a bit. So I like your views on that. The second thing is about the effect of boycott, because there have begun to be series of articles in Haaretz and other places about semi-panic in the establishment circles of universities about the effectiveness of the boycott now. And I'd be interested in any stories you have about how widespread people are feeling that effect.
Okay. Well, about the first, I don't remember how many there were, so I take your word that there were 5. I'm sure there was Tel Aviv University because he's the most liberal, and he has been throughout the time against the government because of the judiciary revolution or reform. So he was very active against the government anyway. Before that, but not on political. I mean, political in another circle. More formally, he's coming from legal studies. He's professor of law, and this is what bothered him. So I think he organized this petition or letter. I don't remember who else, but there must be the Hebrew University and Haifa University. Weizmann Institute for sure. Weizmann Institute for sure was there, and Ariel University was anyway illegal. So we're not talking about Ariel University and Bar-Ilan University. So I don't remember which ones, but some of them are usual suspects in this respect. I agree, of course, that it took so long to realize that it's time for them to open their mouths. And I think they were feeling, as I said, I think it was some of that was a reaction to boycott pressures. Some because after March, the atmosphere changed and they felt they were more secure with the base. I mean, even university presidents have a base, so that their base supported it. They didn't feel as radical. In order to do that, and yeah, I actually agree with the subtext of the question, and they know it. It's much too little and much too late, but then it's good that it happens. But again, I mean, as the year is going to start, and I'm still getting those mails, although I'm not teaching. So again, we have the reservists, the dear reservists that we care so much about, and we have to be nice to them. And so nothing has changed in this respect. And all the military programs and all those soldiers, the students with uniforms and all, they'll keep coming to the campuses. So it's good that we had this letter, but don't exaggerate about its importance. I put it in context.
But how widespread is the awareness of and the effect of boycott internally in the university?
Yeah, I think many people talk about it. Yeah, many people talk about it. That's for sure. How many people really feel that? I mean, the papers. There's this it's strange phenomenon that people are starting saying my paper was rejected because I was boycotted. How do you know that? I mean, most of the time, maybe your paper was rejected. It's could be. I mean, so I don't know how many reliable information there is. There is a sort of rumor that people are boycotted. I haven't been boycotted. I don't know whether it says anything, but I've never been boycotted. I go to conferences, I'm accepted, my papers, I don't know, but maybe I cannot attest for I don't know how widespread it is. There is a widespread phenomenon of talking about it. That's for sure. And complaining and how miserable we are. Well, forget about the Gazans now, how miserable we are. We cannot go.
The effect that the Israeli Sociological Association was not allowed to
Yeah.
go to the International Sociological Association? What kind of effect did this have?
I don't know, again, because I'm not, I'm thinking about the Philosophical Association. Maybe you saw this correspondence because I thought, well, there's no chance that the Israeli Philosophical Association will issue anything, I mean, regarding the war. Philosophers. So I don't know. I think people, as I said, I mean, people are shifting towards criticism. And now I expect another shift because people are really fed up with this war, with everything that has to do with it. So, things are bound together.
Thank you. Can we let Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi ask her question now, please?
Thank you, Mickey. Hello, Anat. Good to see you. My question's about, well, it also relates to this question of apparent mainstream shift towards more willingness to criticize, tired of the war, fed up with being isolated internationally, and so on and so on. But I'd love to hear your view of how people in academia are reacting to this business about recognizing the Palestinian state, because it's really baffled me to see hysterical reactions from people who had actually started to criticize the government. What is it about this idea? I just wanted to...
It's inexplicable.
Can I
resent
finish my... Can I just...
I don't know what to say. It's so...
Hang on a minute, Anna.
So bizarre.
I haven't finished my question yet. So, I mean, it's like... But my God, how dare you recognize a Palestinian state? I know we've always been pretending we wanted two-state solution for the last 30 years, but now the people are actually talking about it.
Yeah.
It's not allowed. Is this happening in academia as well?
I think
see
not.
the contradiction?
I mean, I think it's a politician thing, which is inexplicable. I really don't know how to explain it. Because those who were supportive of two-state solution, all of a sudden, no, really a Palestinian state? So I really don't know how to explain that. It's weird, but politicians are weird. I don't think it represents the atmosphere in academia, actually. Those who supported the two-state solution, I think they keep supporting it without hysteria at the moment. But it's summertime, and I'm not there. I don't see any colleagues who are not. Anyway, my friends... So we'll see. Again, this is something we'll see in the coming months. It's going to be a testing period. The coming month. What happens when Israel reaches the agreement? There is another thing that I'm involved in a very different capacity, and this is refusal. And I think, what about calling your students not to go to this stupid war? I mean, I'm not even saying genocide. I'm not even saying anything about, your morality, but just, are you really happy to waste your life on this? So I would expect by now a stronger call, or a stronger, at least, explicit attitude of faculty resenting the draft or resenting, the reserve service. But on the other hand, we know academics. I mean, they're not the bravest population on earth.
Naomi, do you want to come back or not?
Sorry if that's what I have.
Well, I'm interested in that question too, Anat, if I may, if there are no other questions at the moment, which is why they're not more refusals, especially of reservists. And also, and this might not be exactly the same question, but I don't understand how Israel's economy is still surviving after 2 years of this dreadful war.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not expert about economy, but what I can say is that Israel depends a lot about the arms industry, and it thrives. So that's partly an answer. And another is there is a sort of schism between the general economic situation and the economic situation of individuals, because many individuals suffer, but it doesn't reflect on the general economy of the state. So I think when you look at numbers, this is one thing. When you look at people, there are many, many of them in a very miserable situation. Well, those people who hardly came back to their homes in the north, in the south, those whose private professions are, or whatever they dealt with, are affected by the last 2 years. So I don't think that there is really the economic situation is good. I think there's something treacherous in this, in the way it is presented. But I'm not saying this is just as a paper reader. No, not. What was the first question? Oh, refusal.
Well, the first question.
Yeah. The most important one.
More reservists.
Yeah.
Not
Actually, there is. Many people refuse. I know many people refuse because I'm friends with Yesh Gvul, who are, the supporters of refusal for reservists mainly, and with New Profile, who support refusal with the draftees, and less with the draftees, but more with the reserve. Many people don't go. They simply avoid it. They don't go to prison. They find a solution. They go abroad. They are sick. They bring letters. Whatever. They simply, they even say, many of them, they even say to the commander, please forget about me for this round, okay? And since there is sort of camaraderie within in the army, then sometimes it's respected. What bothers me most, and there are, alas, but there are many people who do want to go and contribute to the genocide because they love the genocide. We are not in lack of those. What bothers me most is the lack, as far as I know, there's no refusal in the Air Force. And that I don't know how to explain. I mean, there are maybe Nira knows. I know there are sociological obvious explanations, but I think it's sort of closed group, and then since it's sometimes they work with their pilots in El Al, in Lakia, and other, and then they go to the reserve service, so there's sort of melange there. Maybe this is an explanation, but it's supposed to be a population that is not right-wing, not definitely right-wing, more educated, more critical, and they bring by far the most horrible results. I mean, by far, it's a war of the Air Force. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, because they were a major force in the protest movement, the mainstream protest movement against Netanyahu before October 7th. And then they went immediately from the opposite.
Yeah. They said, we will not serve. Yeah, but the moment.
And they're the ones that deal with the drones, aren't they?
Yeah, but unlike when you talk about Sayeret, other part of the army, one of the reasons that very often soldiers don't feel that they can allow themselves to refuse is because of the interdependence among different kind of comrades, because they are fighting in time of solidarity. They betray them rather than
that's what they say.
But with the airport, with the pilots, this does not really exist. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's a major research to be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the horrible.
It must be done. I think it has to do with the civil jobs.
That the independence with El Al.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But it's just a guess.
Right. Can I, if nobody else has got a question, can I go back to a sociological question that you raised fairly early on? You talked about the hidden curriculum, as which you explicated beautifully, about the harassment and the intimidation and so on. And you briefly mentioned the actual curriculum. To what extent are there differences between different subjects and different reactions in academia and staff in different departments, different subjects, and what they're teaching to refusal or involvement and intimidation?
Yeah, it's a huge topic, of course, but and Maha and Sarab, they write about it, so in a few paragraphs, and I think it must be another topic that should be researched more, but I think what they mean, and I refer to, is a sort of basic layer before even the curriculum is explicit. I mean, what is taken for granted, and what is taken for granted is, the education we've been through, we Jews, we've been through, what we know, what we share, the values that we share, and all that I don't share. I've never shared, but and of course Palestinians don't, but it's not really acknowledged. And when it is acknowledged, then it's like explicitly acknowledged, but not really understood, even by people with the best wishes. But they don't really understand. I really believe that it's so important to be an activist, because being an activist gives you a sort of perspective, that otherwise you cannot get. And people, even they want to be involved and they want to be kind to Palestinians. I know some of them. They don't really understand. They don't really, for example, the place of the Hebrew language. So it's not, of course, the curriculum, I wouldn't have to say that. Of course, most of it is with Hebrew language. Some of it many with English language, nothing in Arabic. I mean, in the main course, nothing in Arabic. And it's taken for granted that, for this person, for these students, Hebrew language is the second language, English language is the third language, and they're not, the studies, they come from not always the best of schools. Their English is not as wonderful as yours, maybe. Their Hebrew, of course not. They started learning Hebrew late. They don't express themselves so well. Maybe they would have excelled much more if there was an option to submit exams in Arabic. But all this is not, it's not an issue. It's not talked about at all.
Yes, we could go into lots of, but that's true, not just in Israel. It's also true in many countries that English has become the language of most curriculum, most assessments. And that's
but in Israel, it's
problematic. Yeah.
So.
Yes. Are there any more questions people would like to ask? Nira, do you have anything else you would?
No, Anat, you wanted to talk about clean shelters.
Yeah. So there are many places to donate to in Gaza. Yes, thanks for reminding me. I donate to some friends that I know. There is the community kitchen, which is great. Those music teachers, the conservatory, the Edward Said Conservatory, that's a very good place to donate to. But I chose one, and Clean Shelter is an organization established by two friends, one Jew, one Palestinian, both coming from Israel originally, or Palestine. I know one of them very well. I count on them, and they took the Mouassi, the huge, by now very, very densely populated camp, tent camp in the Mouassi, and they are building installation, water tanks, showers. Now, currently, they're working on building special zones for mothers and kids, because there is a problem of women who are attacked, so just sheltering them. But they're working very closely with the community there. And if you're looking for something to donate to, which can be done with British pounds, that's my choice for you.
Thank you. And I put the account number. Can people see it on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's for Clean Shelters for Gaza. Okay, Glyn, you had your hand up.
Yes, thanks. That sounds
And
really.
they have, of course, a website. So, you can find all that. And they give very detailed reports. Once you donate once, then you get all their updates. We've done this, we've done that, and that's very impressive, I think. Sorry, Glyn.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm also on the executive of Jews for Justice for Palestinians, and we give quite often to worthy causes, mostly through BSST, with Shalom Trust. But this looks like a very good candidate. Something I've always wanted to find out about, but because I don't sort of, all my efforts are not in the charity field, but in all the politics. So I never been able to follow it up. But something that always I felt quite strongly about was that the situation of water in Gaza is absolutely dire.
Yeah.
But in the UK here, you can buy filter devices, which are just sort of that big, which fit inside a plastic jerry can and will filter out everything, all viruses as well as bacteria. They won't deal with salt water, but they will deal with just about everything else. And the question, of course, is getting them in.
Of course.
And I wondered whether something that's coming from Israel might actually offer a better chance of getting things in like that.
I don't believe so. I think there's so many restrictions on what is allowed in. Even baby formula is not allowed. So, but it's not my expertise. I simply don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah.
We have
But
one.
my guess is that it wouldn't be allowed.
We have one last question. Can we take another? Are you happy to do that, Anna?
Yeah, sure.
Agnes Corey wants to ask a question.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So I'm very sorry. I intended to be at your lecture from the beginning, but I had a disastrous outing and I was stuck and I was an hour late. So, but I'm going to watch the recording, but I don't know whether you mentioned music school conservatoire during your presentation or whether you mentioned it just now in passing. But I would be interested to know about any music school conservatoire in Gaza or in the West Bank. And so if I could have any contact details for them.
Yeah. I'll simply, we don't even have to have a slide because it's a very memorable name. It's the Edward Said Conservatory of Music, so cannot be forgotten.
No.
So the Edward Said Conservatory of Music, there is a branch still working in Ramallah, the main branch, and there was a branch in Gaza until really, really recently. they operated until a couple of weeks, even a week ago, I think. And then, of course, Gaza City, they had to evacuate, but I keep following them. And I know, I mean, I'm corresponding with one of the teachers there, but, I know the main characters, and they're fantastic. Such a wonderful cause to
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I follow it. I know about the Ramallah branch, or I heard about it. And so you're telling me that
they're amazing.
That's the best place to try to. I think I will have contact to them. So thank you. All right. That's what I will do then. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And Nat, can I also you didn't mention Bisan lectures, and I think this would be.
Yeah, there's one on Wednesday.
Maybe you can tell people, because I think this
it's sort of different topic, but not altogether different. So a few years ago, when Benny Gantz was, the alternative government was the change government. The very few years that Netanyahu wasn't prime minister, Benny Gantz was prime minister. And he decided to declare on 6 human rights organizations, civil society organizations in Ramallah and Gaza as terror organizations. And one of them is a research center called Bisan. And some scientists from Scientists for Palestine and other places, we established a committee for this cause, for, just as a support of the academic community, Palestinian academic community, and especially the Bisan. And we're holding throughout the academic year from September to May. It's the 3rd year now, 3rd, 4th. Every month, a lecture given by someone with a standing. This Wednesday, it's going to be a neuroscientist, Norwegian neuroscientist. And just follow it. If you type in Bisan lecture series, it will come up. And do come. I'm there as well. It's part of the organizing committee.
Could I just add, I go to most of them, and they are world-class speakers. So it's really
they're really, really good. Amos Goldberg was fantastic last time.
Yeah, but I looked, I couldn't go there, and I looked for a recording, and I couldn't find recording of the lecture. I could
No, Amos is
see
there.
the abstract.
There are two were facts, sorry. One was by Nadia Abul-Haj, and the other one, alas, is by Peter Beinart. And it was very, very interesting conversation, but it's not recorded. I think all the others are recorded. So you can write to me and I'll find it for you, whatever you wish. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, friends.
Nira, are you going to do the thanks, or am I?
Well, why don't you as a...
Okay, well...
Nat knows that I thank her, and I introduced her, so you can thank her.
Okay, well, Anat, thank you so much for a really... I can't use the word wonderful, because it was wonderful, but it was wonderfully chilling too, about the harassment and the terror it must invoke in Palestinians, in particular in academia. And it's a horror story, really. But thank you for giving us such a wonderful overview of the situation for academics, Palestinian and Israelis in the situation now, and going back much further than we're willing to very often admit. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. It was, and your report and the article we will circulate details of to others.
Right.
Can we all
circulate as well the Bisan lecture series if we're
yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, friend.
Bye.